Morning, Benji.
Hey Alex, how you doing?
Not bad. How you doing?
Yeah, all right. Busy, busy, busy.
Hello.
Hey
Hello.
Mark.
How was the London meetup, Benji? Were you able to go there despite the strikes and everything?
Yes, it was excellent. I mean, you know me, I love all things GraphQL, but yeah, it was really great. We actually had a really good turnout despite the train strikes. I think we were expecting or like 30 tickets sold, and I think 24, 25 people turned up, which is like pretty good. Normally I expect about, 30 to 40% drop off, so 20%'s pretty good. Yeah, it was good. Good night, good talks, good community. Went to the pub after for like 20 minutes, and then I had to go and get my train.
And that worked well.
Say
No,
again?
no train issues. No train issues. It
They
worked
were all right,
well.
actually. Yeah, the trains. I couldn't get my normal one, so rather than going straight up to London, I had to like go off to Reading and then up around the north of London and then come back in from the top, sort of thing. But all the actual trains that I took were all on time, so it's fine.
Good. Cool. I didn't know these were paid meetups. Like, did you say you sold ticket? Like, do people have to pay to attend the meetup? Or is
Oh
it
no, no,
just registration?
they're free
Okay,
tickets. It's just that's the word you use.
got it. Yeah. Hello.
We don't have any agenda items listed. Do we know what we're doing today? Cool. Give people a couple more minutes here.
Calvin says he's coming. He will be a few minutes late.
All right. I think he wanted to talk to Jordan about perspective implementations and stuff, or is that right? Maybe.
I
Maybe.
know I had some questions just like reading through the two different ones about like the approach we're going to take for some of those things as far as the semantic non-null stuff, because I think there's like different implementations of like the level stuff. So just trying to understand that as maybe a topic.
For sure, for sure.
And then I guess there's a general question about how do we move forward, like with a big change like this, like how can we make it move incrementally,
Yeah, for
or do we
sure.
need a big bang? I think we can start actually because Benoit is not coming tonight. not there. And Calvin said we can start without him.
All right.
So looks like we're all set.
I think
Sounds-
Itamar, who's been working on error handling and relay, may be joining me in this. Oh, he's here. So never mind.
All right. Cool. The preamble, everyone in here has agreed to the specification membership agreement. Is that correct? Great. There's also a bunch of also agreed to the participation guidelines, contribution guide, and code of conduct. We can quickly go around and do an introduction of the attendees. I'm Alex. I am here as an independent.
Hey, I'm Martin from Paris. I work at Apollo on Apollo Kotlin. Benji, I think you're next.
Sorry, yeah, I was just trying to find the agenda. Hi everyone, I'm Benji.
I'm Jordan. I work on relay at Meta with Itamar, who is not on the agenda today. He can maybe send a PR.
I guess
Calvin
since Calvin's
also not here.
Yeah. So I'm Ernie. I currently work at Coinbase.
Great. Oh, my browser's freezing up. Okay. I can do the note taking. I'll volunteer for that. We have nothing on the agenda right now, but Ernie had some questions about the proposals. And Jordan, did you have something?
He had a couple things. I thought I could maybe take a little bit of time sharing what I learned implementing semantic non-null for grots, some reflections on list items. And then also I thought it might be good to do a check-in on error handling and sort of what we've been learning internally and maybe what, if anything, you all have been learning at Apollo or if you've gotten any signal yet. Yeah, those are some things I'd like to touch on.
Awesome. Previous action items. Let's check on those. I don't think we had any action items. Is that right, Benji?
Guessing so.
Well, there was rename it to the Nullability Working Group. I think we can close that. We've done that.
We did that, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm supposed to add in some links, I think. I don't remember if I did that or not, but I'll check in a few.
Yeah, there was no actions were created in the September meeting.
Yeah. Ernie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think this should be like pretty quick. So like I think to preface this, I understand like that the semantic non-null directive is like clearly very much a intermediate solution, and as of such, like probably won't exist as part of the spec. I would assume, obviously. But I think it like when I was trying to like catch up with some of this stuff over the past month or two, like I was looking at the Apollo stuff and seeing how they implemented like the level argument for basically like when you have semantic non-null on array types, being able to specify like, do you mean the field itself or do you mean the objects in the field are semantic non-null? And correct me if I'm wrong, I think, but like my understanding was that the level argument for that directive was like an array of like, are you applying it to the field itself? Or are you applying it to the inner thing? Like it's kind of like you can do both with a single command. And then Jordan, I saw for your example with the Gratz repo that it was more of like you just applied the directive twice and like change the level argument. I assume that was kind of a plan where you'd have like at semantic non-null level 0, at semantic non-null level 1. Because I think when you like applied the directive, it was you marked it in the type as like I forget exactly the details, but it was like can be applied multiple times or whatever, right? So I just kind of was curious, like had we talked about like approach A versus approach B, or like was there a reason we have two different approaches for that, or just kind of curious like what the state of that is?
Jordan, you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll take it. Yeah. So yeah, Martine and I have been iterating on that. So I think what you're observing is like just like two versions switching over. I think we've discovered that the array syntax is slightly cleaner. It lets more of the validation be done by just existing GraphQL validation. So yeah, I think the array one is the new and the multi-use one is the old.
Okay.
This does also overlap a little bit with some sort of takeaways I have around list item nullability generally, which I can get into maybe as a separate section.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of figured it. Like I knew everything was like it's all prototype
Yeah, so
code
my
all
team I
over the
think
place.
linked to a PR in chat, which is like the switch to the new syntax, and I think he and I at least are in agreement that that's a slightly cleaner way. But yeah, I think the key observation is like this is just like, you know, what do we want to use in the interim while we explore this space? And it's really to see like, okay, independent of what the syntax looks like, what does the actual behavior end up looking like? So I don't know,
Yeah,
it's too important as long as we have a good place to point people to, like, here's the one that the community is gonna coalesce around.
right. Yeah, I mean the whole like level concept goes away. Obviously, like the real syntax is there because it's like you don't need that. You just you put the exclamation point in the right place. So, but I just was kind of curious, like if that had coalesced around a single solution or a single plan, or if there was like trade-offs there. So
I think it's mostly better with array because it leverages built-in validation. Like directives do not need to be repeatable and everything. And I actually implemented it in Apollo Kotlin beginning of this week, and it removed a bunch of validations that I had. So it's much cleaner now. There is one trade-off, which is we have the same levels argument for catch, for error handling, and maybe this is a discussion for later, but since we are on the levels topic, might be good to mention it now. And the semantics are slightly different there because catch also takes an argument, like you can catch to a result, to null or throw. And so with the array, a side effect of this change is that now all the levels have to basically catch to the same thing. Like you can't really have the root field catch to result and then items catch to null or something like this. So I don't know, maybe it's not a big deal. I don't expect it to be a big deal, so we can continue iterating with that. But this was a side effect of this change. Like if there is one drawback, it's that. But otherwise, it's really good.
yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it taught me that you can apply the same directive multiple times on a single field. I don't know that I'd ever come across that before, so learned something new.
If it should be really, really deprecated, you can just deprecate it twice.
For multiple reasons, yeah.
Please don't use it.
Yeah, I think that's all I had for that. Like I said, just kind of a clarification on that. So,
well, if possible, then maybe I'll segue that into some thinking about list semantic nullability and list items generally. So as Ernie pointed out, I was implementing this for Grots, and one thing that I started to realize is the place where we want semantic non-null is basically all the places where people are currently opting or using a nullable type exclusively because they want the error handling piece of nullability. Where without absent error handling concern, they would have put a non-null. And for implementation first servers, I think that's generally a consensus that you would do that on the field itself because the field itself might throw when it's evaluating. However, I don't believe that there's the same motivation to do that for list items because in most programming languages, there isn't really a concept of an error state for the list item itself. So I'm not aware of any place where you would today say, I'm going to make this list item nullable because I want to be able to handle the case that an individual item in the list is in an error state, because our execution model is generally at the resolver granularity. And so there's no like exceptions being thrown when you're computing a single item in a way that the like executor can be aware of, right? The executor can't tell that, oh, getting the parent object for one item in the list through, but the rest of them didn't throw. At least not in any like server implementations that I'm aware of. So maybe I'll stop there and see if anyone is aware
Yeah,
of it.
I've know of at least one team that has encountered that. They're using DGS, and looks like they're able to get errors in lists. So this team would be impacted. I can see with them. I don't know what I can share, but I can see with them if they want to share their use case.
Is that like what language is that? Service that
DGS is Java. So
Java, so maybe
it's a framework built on top of GraphQL Java.
interesting. Yeah, I could think of like a languages that have result types might be able to support that. Benji,
So in GraphQL.js, you can return an array of promises from a resolver, and so those promises can reject individually, and people do that. It's also worth keeping in mind that GraphQL.js also doesn't only operate based on arrays; it operates based on iterables. So anything that's iterable could raise an error in a later point. And also tying this into other things that we're working on, the stream directive, you could well be streaming results from a server, sending them through, and maybe one of those results fails to fully hydrate for some reason. You can't pass the JSON or whatever it is. And so that field would error, but the stream itself would still continue. So I can think of quite a few different cases where we would still need this within list items.
yeah. So I don't want to imply that I was saying we might not need it, but rather that it may be less common, certainly than like even if we have plural fields or matrix fields, the only a subset of those likely would actually use the semantic non-nullable. And I guess the other interesting thing I thought here was like right now, I feel like with regular fields, the ability to declare semantic non-null gives you this sort of like perfect balance of like ultimately resilient, but also ultimately expressive in the schema. Whereas like I think and then that's the best balance for like old clients and new clients. But like non-nullable items in a list, if you switch that to semantic non-null, then like legacy clients are going to have to deal with a potential nullability. But if you don't switch it to semantic non-null, then it's like less resilient. The other case I was thinking of, Benji, relating to that was like runtime type validation, where like if you say that it's an integer and you get a float or something like that, or if you say it's a string and you accidentally return a number, there would be another opportunity for a field level error. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting tension where like for fields, it feels like you can get the best of both worlds for both clients. But for list items, there maybe isn't that same sort of best of both worlds option. That's all I have to report.
I have a question. Maybe I wasn't understanding what Benji was saying, but when you were talking about the array of promises, right? In the case of a catch, it would return, it would actually fulfill the promise, right? It would complete the promise and not reject it and provide the error as is. Whereas if the catch directive is not provided, then it would reject the error, right? That would be the behavior of a promise in that case, right? Is that what you were referring to? Or?
Yeah, I'm just more referring to where errors can happen. I'm not actually super involved in the whole catch directive thing, so I leave that to the people that are dealing with that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just like wondering like how you like saw that happening. But okay, we'll take that.
Great. Yeah, welcome, Calvin. To catch you up, we were just talking about semantic non-nullability on arrays. Did you have an agenda topic?
No, I was just sitting in today.
Okay.
I had one question about for Jordan about Graz. Like when you did the implementation, I understand Graz is a code first server, right? You write code and it generates a schema.
Yeah.
So given that TypeScript has full support for nullability, do you sometimes like how do you express that a field can be actually null or can never give an error? I guess this is more the question. Like how do you express exclamation mark? Like is that something you can do with Graz?
Yeah, so there's two modes. There's nullable by default and not nullable by default. When you opt in, or nullable by default is the default config option, and what that does is if your resolver returns a non-nullable string, for example, we would say actually in the schema that's going to be nullable because we want to account for the fact that it might error. So that's like the first piece, where like basically we say whatever you said about the nullability of the thing in your TypeScript types, we're just going to ignore that and make it nullable anyway because we want to be robust. There's an option to opt back into the exclamation point by adding like a tag kills parent on exception, which tries to convey that this is about error handling, not about nullability. Then the second piece is there's the strict semantic nullability or the semantic nullability option, which you can layer on top of default to nullable, which basically says, okay, if we do that thing where we turn it into nullable, even though it wasn't typed like that in your TypeScript, we'll also slap on a at semantic non-null so that clients can see, oh, it's only null because it might be in an error state.
And the tag is still there, like you can still kill parent on error in both mode, right?
Say that again.
If you want to make it an exclamation mark,
Right.
even with strict semantic non-null, you can still add at kill parent and it will be an exclamation mark.
Right, that will supersede the defaulting to nullability piece, which then opts it out of the strict semantic nullability.
Makes
So it's
sense.
just when we would have turned it into null simply for the purposes of error handling, that's when we would also add the at semantic non-null.
Very cool. Nice. Thanks.
And again, because I wasn't aware of some of the details Benji shared with me, thank you for that about lists of promises. I'm only doing it at the resolver level today because those are the only types of errors that I was aware of we could encounter. Or I guess that Graz supports because it doesn't support arrays of promises at this moment, but I can now extend that and add support for that. I can link to the docs about it too.
Hey, Stefan. Do you have any agenda items for today?
I do not.
Cool. Jordan, do you want to quickly summarize what you were just talking about?
With Graz or
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see when Steven came in. I don't know how much you missed.
you can probably just check out the docs that I just linked. That probably covers.
Cool. Strict semantic ability. Thank you. I'm just catching up. I've been on parental leave the last couple months.
Ah, welcome back.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
Yeah, I would love to take a moment to share just a little bit more nuance about, because I think the error handling piece is like intrinsically linked with this work, because it sort of presupposes that we have a way to handle errors out of band. So I'm curious to hear, like, Paula, I know you guys have already shipped something here. If you've gotten any signal back, if you've learned anything. I can also share a little bit more nuance that we've learned as we're working to roll out internally, but also some of our native clients are working on adding it as well internally, and they're working with partner teams. So I can share some context there, but also curious to hear from Apollo.
So we've had a bit of feedback, not too much. Like the first feedback we have always is, when is this going to be in the syntax? Like people read the docs and they're like, hey, this is really cool. It solves the problem, but it's also a very long word to say at semantic non-null. And because we are working mostly with client teams, it means they have to extend the schema, so they have to go into the server schema, type schema extensions, which is a bit weird with directives. And they are not super happy with that. So we've got a couple of teams that went ahead and did a prototype with it. And it kind of worked well. The semantic non-nulls, they usually love the semantic non-null part because it turns nullable models into non-null ones. They're quite happy about it. The catch is still a bit blurry, to be honest, because if you have a large code base using fragments, we merge all the fragments in Apollo Kotlin. So if you put a catch on a field, you have to put it on all the fields in all fragments, and they have to match exactly. So it's a bit cumbersome. What we are experimenting with at the moment is the ability to set a default catch for a field definition. So for a given field where your team will have to handle errors. I don't know, like you have shipping information for a product, and this is a microservice that is known to be not very robust and give errors a lot of times. So you can build that knowledge and catch it to a result class or something like this.
Interesting.
So this is the current state, and yeah, we should also experiment, but we haven't started yet about collocating fragments, because then I think it makes for an easier story. You don't have to merge all your fragments or so on. Like you can just get your data or get an error, basically. It's going to be a tough sell for Android developers, though, because they are really into layering, and a lot of them use Apollo Kotlin as a network library and abstract the models so that they don't leak to the UI. So they map the network models to the UI models, which, if you do collocated fragments, is kind of the opposite of what you want, because you want fragment next to your UI. So yeah, these are the current reflections, brainstormings. So semantic non-null seems to be a large consensus. Catch is still up in the air, I would say. And everybody wants nicer syntax.
Everyone wants nicer syntax that assumes errors have been dealt with. No one wants to handle errors.
Yep.
Yeah, I can give a little update. We've similarly been working on rolling out Catch and also supporting it in our native clients, or not, or like what does it look like? And talking with Android developers and iOS developers, and particularly developers on one particular internal product that has like a sort of like you're in like a migration state where like a lot of their schema is actually backed by some REST endpoints, and so there's like data missing sometimes, and so it's like a sort of muddy reality. But one of the things that came out of that conversation was that in some cases what they would prefer for their error handling is not like catch to null, catch to error, but in some places they would, and it actually kind of echoes what you're saying about like maybe defining it more at the schema, saying like, here's how I want to handle, I want a result type always for this field because I know my error or something like that. But that they have expressed interest in defaulting to stale data if they get an error. And I think this actually overlaps something, Ernie, you were mentioning at Coinbase, which is if you have a normalized store and you get an error, you have a choice. You can publish that error into the normalized store and tell everyone about it and get correctness. Or you can say, maybe it's better to just pretend like we didn't see that. And it's better to use what's stale. I think it's still unclear like who is in the best position to specify that behavior, right? Is that something that the individual component field would say, oh, I'm fine with stale here? Probably not. Is that something you would specify like at the schema level? Is that something you configure for your product, you know, in the environment? But it was an interesting like sort of third option. Obviously, it doesn't handle all cases, right? If it's the initial fetch, you still have to handle the fact that it errored and you don't have a valid value. But I just wanted to share that interesting other path for people with normalized stores.
So how would that be? Would that be a directive thing as well, like stale when error or something like this?
Unclear. I think the things we would look at now is like maybe it's just something the client opts into, says like, hey, by default, I'm actually fine always falling back to stale values. It might be that the client is configured saying like for these fields on these types, I'm okay falling back, or the inverse, I'm fine with everything being stale except these 6 fields. We're still looking. I think it's always a challenge. Like who has the right position to do that? That's not too verbose.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the schema level is a bit heavy-handed for that, as far as like the context is so important, right? Of like, can I deal with stale data here? Like maybe, but maybe not over here. Like, you know, I mean, it's kind of like you can come up with ideas for all these things. So it's kind of a tough, like you need some like concrete examples, I think, to drive it forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting concept for sure.
Ernie, I thought you had mentioned something like this for your error handling at Coinbase. I thought I had stolen some of these ideas from you.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, we definitely do that. I just
okay.
tied that concept with like the catch concept, right? And like obviously those are related, but yeah, I mean that is something that we kind of like have support for sure. Of just like, let's not show the user error if we have old data to show them, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I hadn't made the connection between that and the catch directive.
I also maybe one other thing that we could touch on, just like Benji with your RFC, and in interest of like how do we move fast here? You know, what is the next step there? Are we just waiting on just more of this stuff to develop to figure out what's viable, or is there anything particular you're blocked on?
So just to recap the status of things, effectively there's the 2 main proposals at the moment, mine and Lee's, and broadly they have significant overlap. So at first they looked like they were quite different, but they have come in line in many ways. So I think that the spec changes, or a lot of them, are the ones that we will ultimately go with. The question effectively is around syntax, and also on whether there's going to be this global directive that sort of toggles the meaning of the syntax or not. That question hasn't got an answer yet. And I think, to be honest, nobody's happy completely with either of the solutions. They both are problematic. But yet no one's come up with the magic, this solves everything syntax solution yet, alas. I'm going to change the syntax for mine again. I'm going to go with a tilde bang, because you've got like normal, then you've got like nearly non-nullable, and then non-nullable, and I actually think that that works quite nice. I've been running it in my head for like the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm like, yeah, I think that's as close as I'm gonna get to an acceptable syntax. So yeah, I need to do the updates specifically for that syntax. I've actually done the prefix bang at the moment, but it's all right, but could be better. I think tilde bang will be better. But yeah, other than that, it's the next step would be hopefully get a consensus on which of those 2 directions we should go, and then implement. And I like that we are doing the directive approach at the moment to test like the theory behind it and see whether it addresses the problem. But I think we've got a reasonably high confidence that something like this seems to be the right solution. And there's still questions, like you say, around catch and like, what do I do when there is an error there? Which is definitely related. And it might be that if we noodle on it long enough, maybe we'll come up with a solution to both things at the same time, which would be interesting if it is solvable by the same thing at the same time, which it's not entirely certain that it is. But yeah, so if we pick a direction, then it's just a case of implementing it in GraphQL.js and any other reference implementations that want to implement it, and putting it out there under an experimental flag and seeing what people think.
Cool. I think one thing I had said I would do and then haven't yet was just try to collect up the like pros and cons of the different proposals so that we could have a more like concrete way of evaluating the 2. I don't think I'll have a chance to get to that by like tomorrow, but I can continue to.
That they are so aligned now on like all of the concepts in them that literally that list comes down to Lee's version has a directive that changes the meaning of the unadorned type.
Right.
That's like the con. The
Right.
pro is that the question mark is more obvious what it does. The pro of mine is we don't have any ambiguous types. We don't need a global directive. It just says what it means. The con being tilde bang is maybe not the most obvious thing in the world, and you'd have to look it up to know what it means.
Right.
And that's
especially if we expect it to be like very common, like many fields will have it.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I won't worry too much about that. Maybe after our next meeting, we'll be clear what if anything needs clarification.
If there are more differences than that, I'd love to know what they are. But I think that is literally what it boils down to.
I'm aware that there may be more like unobvious implications of having a schema level flag. For example, like if you're joining multiple schemas together, or like just concatenating schema files. So maybe that would be good to capture somewhere, but yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, definitely. It would be good to capture all that kind of stuff together.
Do we have any like action item, anything we want? Like, how do we get there? How do we get consensus? Do you want to do a vote again, like we did for CCN?
I'd love to know if Lee's solution didn't exist and no other solution existed and my one was the only one, what symbols would you choose? What do you think would be the right thing there? That's what I'd love to know. Like, what is the least worst syntax to use?
Yeah. I really appreciate you continuing to, I guess, pardon the pun, bang your head against this, because it really, like, I want there to be a satisfying one, and like my instinct is that there isn't one, but I feel like you have actually uncovered 2 options that do feel like they're continuing to improve.
I like this is a nit, but I think that bang tilde is probably better because it matches the bang and then it adds like a kind of at the end.
Qualifier.
Yeah, qualifier like right afterwards.
That's really interesting. So the reason that I've been thinking about it as like tilde user bang, and I think what you're saying is user bang tilde.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then I was assuming it was it was user tilde bang to be like it's a sort of approximately bang.
Yeah,
It's
mine was more like
qualifying the bang.
the array syntax, where you have the open, then the thing, and then the close, and that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking of it as. But like, yeah, putting them together is another option. We did talk about the interrobang at one point, and I mean, it's
I mean,
still
that's like
not a terrible idea.
Would it be
yeah. I
would
mean,
it
I
be
think
useful?
you're talking almost like the bang asterisk of like, like this is nullable or this is non-null asterisk. Like,
Yeah.
that's sort of
Would
like
it
the
be
same like line
useful?
of thinking.
Oh, sorry to talk over you. Would it be
No, you're good.
useful to set up some synchronous time to just brainstorm and like sit in a VC together with some people and just throw stuff at the wall?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Let's do that. I'll reach out in Discord and we can try to find some time. That works.
Could we also
just
ask?
shared on gone.
Could we also ask the community, like maybe make a poll or something like that, or do you think it's too early for that?
I think it's definitely too early for a poll. I think we should basically spam out as many symbols as we can, find the least bad of those, and then put that out for a poll. But yeah, I think at the moment, like having a call for ideas would be welcome. Like, especially if someone's like, oh, I program in, yeah, I'm not going to say the language that I was going to say because it's rude, but I program in some symbol-based language, and actually we use this symbol for that. And having some prior art there that I'm not aware of already would be quite useful. I'd quite liked for a while. I mean, to be honest, I started with asterisk, like, yeah, it's user-ish, user caret with like a footnote. There's a lot of things that it could be. So yeah, absolutely. Let's have a meeting. I've shared a gist into the chat with some of the things that I thought about, but that was like months ago. I've had loads more since then. So yeah, any ideas, just throw them my way and we'll figure it out.
How about we programmatically generate all possible syntax and then create a Tinder style UI so that we can
I'm so happy
Ask
that
ChatGPT to choose.
name.
But yeah, in all honesty, I think if it wasn't for the syntax, then I think that this proposal is the one that follows the guiding principles the best. It doesn't like break or confuse other things, keeps the most options for the future and so on. It's just not an ideal syntax.
So just to make sure I understand, Benji, like the tilde syntax you're talking about, that's the one that you're showing in that where like the tilde and the exclamation point like aren't co-located. They're like one's in the front, one's in the back. Is that
that's what I was
that is
thinking
that,
of
that
doing,
that's
yeah,
that's your current highest, like
yeah.
not that that's like the decision, but like that's what you want best. Okay, I thought you were having it like it was like
putting it
tilde
next to the
exclamation
tilde.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a preference?
I mean, I think the weird, like, I guess the thing that I see that's on this is like username has a tilde in front of string and that's it. Like, what does that mean? Yeah, because I think like separating them kind of forces it to be like, well, if you put one but not the other, what does that mean? I guess, but like that's true of everything. Where it's like even if you put it at the end, it's like if it's tilde exclamation point, it's like, well, what if you forget the exclamation point? Like presumably that would be a validation error, obviously, I guess. But
and it would be a very immediate validation error, right? The next token that we read would be like, well, it has to be an exclamation point here, and there isn't one, so error.
Yeah,
and I think that's very easy to fix.
Yeah, I agree with kind of what Jordan was saying of like, yeah, like tilde exclamation point is like approximately non-null, it's sort of like but it's kind of almost the same thing of like of doing an exclamation point asterisk of like, this is non-null, but with an asterisk, of like read the fine print type approach, but yeah.
Yeah, then every schema must end with the closing asterisk and then the explanation of what happens. That way it's self-documented.
Right. Right. Just a free asterisk at the end with text. Yeah.
I'm interested to know if there's other languages, because I know that there's languages that encode the like errorability of a function or method or whatever into the syntax. So like bang and I think maybe question mark are used in these ways in some languages, but I'm not so familiar with those, and certainly not anymore. I'm interested to know if question mark always means nullable, because I can imagine it meaning like, yeah, it's a user, but it might go wrong, rather than it's a user or null. So we could literally use the question mark syntax for this. So it's like user, which is nullable, user question mark, which is user or error, and then user bang, which is just user. But my gut says no, question mark's not going to work.
Yeah. I think it's like are there languages like that? And then the other like the second question is, given the sort of predominant languages in which GraphQL is used, would it sort of align with the semantics that those developers are used to?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or maybe not even would it align, but would it directly conflict?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
What do we want to bring to the next GraphQL working group meeting, if anything?
Is it tomorrow?
Is it?
The-
Oh yeah,
the-
GraphQL
yeah.
primary.
There's a discussion of should versus must for the errors array. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, I won't be there for this one, but Benoit, my colleague, said he will bring it up.
I chatted with Matt Mahoney. He has some context as well, so I think he'll be there too.
I have the vaguest feeling that the topic has come up before, but I don't remember specifically when. But yeah, I think as we try and do all this stuff, I think it's going to get more critical to understand exactly what the reasoning there is. And if it means that we have to do something a little bit different, like having a concrete error path of some kind that's in a different property, then so be it. But I hope that we can just change it to a must, and that should be good.
I think Matt mentioned something like similar to the semantics. So it's like the pattern that you generally would return 404 for a route, which was you didn't have permission to view, even if the route did exist. That there may be like similar cases where a resolver might throw an error that was like you don't have permission to view this error, but that the server should still have the ability to. I'm not going to include an error message here because that would leak information about whether that route is like actually exists.
Which is an issue for like error handling clients. If you
But
don't have the
even-
path,
Even in that situation, right, the server should be able to just truncate the path to where the null occurred, because the consumer knows that that path exists, right? Because they can see it. So we, maybe it should contain where it happens, but it must contain at least where the null has occurred, or something like that.
Yeah, or I mean, if the field is fully nullable, then I think it's probably we can get into it in the work group meeting.
Yeah.
Or maybe on GitHub. I think that's
Okay.
it's like immediately important, and then we can brainstorm syntax.
Yeah, did someone want to take organizing that little brainstorming session as an action?
I can do that.
Cool.
I'll reach out on Discord, and if you're interested, join the Nullability work group on Discord.
All right. That's everything. We close it out here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks, y'all.